Welcome back to Film Fanatics. I'm Gal, and unfortunately, my co host Alan is not with us today, but joining us are two incredible guests who are fanatics like me of the visionary filmmaker we are spotlighting today, Mr. Wes Anderson, who started his career back in the 90s and keeps releasing exciting movies for us film lovers. And to my right is a member of the Reel Chronicles podcast and one of the hosts of the League of Cinephiles and an old friend, Jack Renaud. How are you today, Jack?
Very, very good. Thank you for having me. It's always exciting when I get to talk about something that I'm really passionate about. Movies is just one thing, but an entire director's work who I'm very fond of. Very, very excited for today.
And to my bottom is a film critic who on Instagram you could find at Katie at the Movies, a member of the official association of female film critics, the International Film Society of Critics, and the Critics Circle, just like myself. It is Katie Carter joining us today. How are you today, Katie?
Hello. Great. Thanks for having me on.
As a bit of an intro, let's talk a bit about like how we first got into Wes Anderson and where he stands in our favorite filmmakers.
Well, for me, it was around the time that like I had begun to really make that leap into like, looking at it more as like cinema rather than just like, watching movies. And I had heard of the Grand Budapest Hotel because the 2014 Oscars was the first one that I ever like predicted. But I didn't see it until a couple years later. Moonrise Kingdom was actually the first one that I saw. And then it was just a bunch of backtracking from there. But at this point, he's certainly one of my favorite filmmakers working today, one that I always find myself being one of the first people at my theater to go see his new movie whenever they come out. So they just bring a lot of warmth and comfort to me, I would say. Even the ones that are lesser down on my rankings, I still have a lot of good things to say about.
Yeah, I think I first was exposed to him really in 2009 with Fantastic Mr. Fox. And that was the year I started reviewing movies and started like really dedicating myself to like going to the theater on a regular basis and seeking things out. So kind of stumbled it into him that way, but it probably wasn't until Moonrise Kingdom a few years later where I was really like, oh, this is like a director with such this wonderful distinct style, and kind of went back into his filmography from there. And now he's one of my very favorite filmmakers working today. I mean, anytime he's coming out with something, I just get like so excited. So
There's a trend here of us getting into him through Moonrise Kingdom. For context, I'm young. So I saw Fantastic Mr. Fox in theaters. I was 7 years old, and um, but it was like my friends' parents took us. It wasn't like, again, I was just going to movies because I always liked movies, but like just like going to see the new animated movie, whatever. I had no idea like who was Wes Anderson. Then so 2012 was the year that I started getting into like movies as movies, right? It's when I started watching Marvel movies in theaters, like not just kids movies in theaters. And I don't remember what movie it was. I think it might have been like The Artist, where I saw it in theaters and the Moonrise Kingdom trailer played. And for some reason, my almost 10-year-old self decided that this looked like a really good movie. And when it came out, I went with my grandma and I just thought it was incredible. And from there, I heard Grand Budapest Hotel was coming out less than 2 years later. And then like I started going back as well. And we'll talk a bit about that. So when we talk about older movies, as we're diving into Wes Anderson's career, we like to label this segment as Total Recall, which is whenever we dive into older movies, look at their place at that time in cinema, and see where they hold up now in our hearts and in movies. So first of all, we'd like to talk about Wes Anderson's film Rushmore, which came out in 1998 and stars Jason Schwartzman as a child prodigy who's a very maybe infamous kid at his private school, and he gets onto some stuff and he knows basically how to do everything. um Also, Jack and I have sort of like a history with this movie because I got a trivia question wrong. We do like trivia, remember, where it's like a week after I saw Rushmore and I totally forgot Brian Cox was in this movie.
And you remembered
um,
Fantastic Mr. Fox, which was like the much smaller character, and
it's like a cameo
I was very
in that movie. Yeah.
I was very interested by that.
I love this movie. I actually just got to rewatch it a few weeks ago in the theater for the first time because I would have been 7 when this one came out. So, yeah, Theater Hero was showing it, so I went to see it with an audience, and it's so funny. And I think with some of Wes's like first few movies, the ones that he co-wrote with Owen Wilson, the humor there's like it's a little bit edgier, I guess. It's a little bit different than his later films where he was either writing on his own or working with other writers. But it's so funny, but it's also, I think, very honest about um, young people, as with so many of Wes's films as well, and being a teenager and getting kind of uh, in over your head with these adult situations. And Bill Murray is just like so fantastic. It's one of my favorite performances of his in that too. So
Jack?
Yeah, and just to bounce off what she ended on, I he's the lead in Zissou, but for me at least, I think this is my favorite Bill Murray performance in a Wes Anderson
yeah,
movie. I just think,
yeah,
for me at least, there's just so much behind his expressions, whether it's like his reaction to his sons just like messing around in the back seat of the car, or him at the edge of the pool just like smoking a cigarette. He always is able to do so much with his face, but the grand conclusion of all of that, for me at least, which is one of my like little favorite moments of anything Wes has ever done, is that fate is the expression he gives after he meets Max's dad in the barber shop. That for me is just what brings the whole movie around. And obviously, there's Jason Schwartzman, which after this movie just becomes Wes's guy, essentially, up through now, up to his performance in Asteroid City. Uh, but yeah, I think this movie kind of furthers what Bottle Rocket was doing and just kind of establishing the grand scheme of everything that Wes likes to do style wise. You know, you have his montages, such as the yearbook montage, which I love, and even the child genius trope that Wes has definitely become known for in more recent years with Moonrise Kingdom and Asteroid City. But no, I just think there's so much heart to this movie, and it's one of my favorite soundtracks as well. A lot of really unique pulls, I would say, especially with some live choices rather than just going with studio ones, which I always, if I were to meet Wes Anderson, I think the soundtracks would be the number one thing I would pick his brain about personally. I just have so much to nerd out.
I think the yearbook thing that you talked about was sort of the beginning of those like narration, like deadpan montages that he has, where it's like going through the objects. By the way, before we get into this, have you guys seen the SNL Wes Anderson parody where it's like Wes Anderson horror movie and it's Edward Norton playing Owen Wilson? That's one of my favorite things ever. Check it out if you haven't. I think it's just called Wes Anderson horror movie, and I don't remember if Alec Baldwin or someone who sounds like him actually did the narration, but it was really funny. And they have one of those montages, something like that. So yeah, one thing that Wes Anderson's he excels at is like humor through really cynical characters. Like Bill Murray's character is kind of miserable in this movie, but like the way that he puts up with things is honestly hilarious. Also, like the settings are pretty ordinary, like the backyard with the pool or the school itself, but he makes it all look really interesting. Um, now with the context, it's funny to talk about, but Brian Cox was very good when you remember that he's in the movie. Um, Olivia Williams also, I haven't seen like her in too many like really big performances, but she did do very good. This is one where like the pacing occasionally dragged, or it was like sometimes occasionally a little too like, okay, that's just like not mean spirited, but like sometimes his humor is kind of a downer. And sometimes you like think it's hilarious, and sometimes like, oh, that's just a downer. And you feel that sometimes in this movie. But the ending is pretty touchy. Like it's not too showy, but it is like it does give the characters what they deserve in a sweet way, at least from how I took it.
yeah. I mean, he's always great at pulling humor out of these really like melancholy situations. I mean, when you look at so many of his films, they deal with these really like heavy themes like grief and loss and dysfunction in between families. Um, but his films always still feel really light and fun. But then, they always have these moments where they're just like utterly devastating. at the same
Yeah.
time. And it's amazing to me how he's able to, combine those different tones and make it work so well.
So what's your rating for this movie out of 10?
Out of 10, I like a 10. I love it. It's great.
I'd probably go with a strong 8. It's in the middle of my rankings,
Okay.
but I mean, even my low one is like a strong 7 out of 10. So I really
Yeah. We'll talk about the ranking later. For me, this is like a 7.5, something like that. But we'll get to more of them. Next up, we want to talk about the Royal Tenenbaums. Now, this movie came out in 2001. It got him, if I'm not mistaken, his first Oscar nomination for writing. And you got Gene Hackman as the titular character, Royal Tenenbaum. Ben Stiller as Chaz Tenenbaum, which is one of my favorite movie character names ever. The Wilson brothers, Danny Glover, Angelica Houston, Gwyneth Paltrow. Surprise, surprise, Bill Murray.
Well, when I first saw it, I was honestly not that over the moon for it. But as is with the case with most Wes Anderson movies, but this one more than others, this has improved with every single rewatch. If you go to my letterbox, you can see my log history goes 3 stars, 3.5, 4, and then currently 4.5. So it just gets better with every viewing. I think more as like I get older and kind of understand like complicated family dynamics and that kind of whole idea. I definitely think I might have seen it a bit too early at first, but I mean, performance wise, I think this is honestly up there for most of the cast members among their best work. I think, especially Ben Stiller, I would say, and in the case of Luke Wilson, I think this actually might have been his last movie with Wes Anderson, while Owen Wilson continued to be
Damn,
one
that's
of
true.
his Owen Wilson continued to be one of his regular players, but Luke Wilson just kind of fell off after here. Not he did movies, obviously, but none more with Wes Anderson, which is really sad because he really came out to play. I would say in the movie.
At least we got him in Zombieland Double Tap. Yeah.
Um, and then going back to what Katie was saying at the end of our Rushmore discussion, I think this movie especially does that kind of comboing of melodrama and comedy. One of my favorite exchanges in the whole movie is in the scene where they're all in the hospital room, and that whole exchange with Chaz and Richie, and they're just like, can I read the suicide note? No. Was it dark? Of course it's dark. It's a suicide note, and it comes after like one of the most gutting scenes in any movie I've honestly ever seen. And so just that has
The
a
bathroom scene.
yes, with Needle in the Hay in the background, which is one of his all-time best uses of a song, without question. And yeah, I think just this whole movie has gotten so much better for me with rewatch. It is very comfortably among my all-time favorite, both Wes Anderson movies and just movies in general. And I just really adore this movie.
Yeah, it's one that's gotten better for me over time as well. I think as I became more familiar with Wes Anderson and his style and everything. I have to say, when I saw Asteroid City last week, there was a family there, and there was a dad and two kids, and they were dressed as Chaz Tenenbaum and his children in like the tracksuits and everything. It was perfect.
Oh,
Oh,
that's so cute.
It was
like
great.
looking like that.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. It was perfect. But yeah, this is like one of the best ensembles ever. I mean, you can never go wrong with Gene Hackman. And again, I think this is he's had such a storied career, and this is, I think, a highlight definitely for his later career. It's been a long time actually since I've really sat down and watched this movie, but I did have on a few weeks ago the like bonus features and the commentary that's on the Criterion disc. And watching that, I was just so struck again by how meticulous Wes is when he's creating these worlds and framing the shots. And like when they were making the murals that are in one of the bedrooms, he was like, oh, the hair on like this little character that's like this big on this mural isn't right. I'm gonna like go in with permanent marker and fix it. Like he's just so detail oriented, but it's to such great ends.
I actually watched this movie for the first time when I was on vacation. Like, I downloaded it on Amazon Prime, and we were, like, in the car on the way, and I was, like, watching it and really invested, because Wes's style just really grabs your attention. And I will agree with Jack that, like, on my first impression of it, I was like, "I don't know if I'd put this high on the ranking because it just felt like such a downer." And then the more you think of it, the more it goes up because, first of all, I think the writing is really good, and Gene Hackman's excellent, like you said. I think, like, just like he's sort of begging to be heard by his children and to be forgiven, this is sort of him going like, "Hey guys, I still got this," to his fans. And he won the Golden Globe for best comedy actor, actually, which is really cool. And yeah, I just really like it. The ensemble is great. Again, there are some parts that are just really like depressing, like Ben Stiller waking his kids up in the middle of the night to do a fire drill because his wife was killed in, I think, a plane crash or a fire. Like, there's still some stuff that's really like sad, but there's always like him sugar coating it with like something really funny. I think this one's even more laugh out loud than Rushmore, just a screenplay again. There's also the weird subplot of like not really incest, but like he's in love with his stepsister, which or adopted sister. Yeah, which I guess is not immoral, but kind of weird. Um, but yeah, there's also Danny Glover's great line where where he's like, I think it's something like, "I don't think you're a dick, Royal. You can just be a real asshole."
Like
Or like,
you're just a real son of a bitch or something like that. He's
yeah,
just like, I'm like very flattered. He takes it as like a term of
yeah, real son of
endearment.
a bitch. I think that's it. So yeah, I'd give this one a good 8 out of 10.
That's a strong 9 over here for me. It well, maybe one more rewatch and I'll hit that 10. Who knows?
Ooh.
Ooh,
I'll give it a 10. I love it.
still a 10. Okay, awesome. Katie's on a roll today. So next I want to talk about one that is actually I may have a softer spot for than others, and it is called The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. And I'll open by saying that I had a sort of similar lukewarm reaction when I first watched it, which is it's really well done, but it's so cynical and such a bummer. Then by chance, I encountered it again on TV, and I there was just some parts of it, like even this is the part where I want to talk about soundtrack. Willem Dafoe is playing like David Bowie songs in French on the ukulele throughout the movie. Like in the background, the camera's not even zoomed in on him. And it's the sweetest detail. And there's this moment where he's like getting on a helicopter and he's just playing like Life on Mars in the background. And it's just such like this like in a way weirdly peaceful moment. And there's so many great moments like that. There really is no, I guess, poetry in this movie because bad things do happen, but he is going all out with the set design and the practical stop motion effects for the animals. And I think this one was really good, and it's really gone up in my eyes, actually, like a lot.
Yeah, this one for me actually is one that I'm lesser on, but again, like I could rewatch it and then change my mind, but at the given time, I think the initial setup I really love. I think some parts in the middle kind of lose me, but it does eventually win me back at the end. I also just really like the fact that this movie is kind of an entire tribute to Jacques Cousteau, even down to the uniform that the crew's wearing. Owen Wilson in this movie, really interesting because it's a much more kind of calm and reserved character than the ones we've seen him play prior. Most notably, I would say in Bottle Rocket.
Yeah,
But kind of like you were saying, I think this is another big, real stepping stone into his evolution as a kind of just world designer. And I think we'll probably end up talking about another movie that I think just really switches it for him for the rest of his career. But I think the whole introduction scene to the submarine is really cool.
Yeah, this movie feels like notably quirkier compared to everything that came before, like from the design and the premise. Like he's kind of doing his own version of Moby Dick in a way. One thing I did notice when I was rewatching Rushmore is that throughout it, the Jason Schwartzman character, he's reading a book that he checks out from the library, and it's the Jacques Cousteau book, and I'm totally
Good
blanking on
point.
what it's called, but the one that's about marine biology. And I was like, oh, that's interesting that that pops up here. And, now this is like very much inspired by him as well. But yeah, this is another one with like a fantastic ensemble. It's kind of fun to see Bill Murray really like taking the lead in this one when he was such a great supporting player before. I really like it too. It's probably not at the top for me either, but I would say that I'm still one of those who enjoy it more than most. I like the weird sense of humor and yeah, all the effects and the animation, like you were saying too, are so wonderful.
So going off of what she was mentioning about Cousteau is they also pull music from this TV show called Interspace. It was, I believe, an Australian marine biology kind of docu-series from like the 80s with just like a really cool jazz soundtrack that I think they use it over some of his own like Steve Zissou movies in the movie. So yeah,
Those are great.
it's not just Jacques Cousteau. It's all sorts of marine wildlife explorers that he's fascinated with, and he does that in all of his movies. Kind of just like you were talking about French Dispatch, just applies his love for everything by everything.
So Jack, start us off with your rating for this one?
I would say probably a high 7. It's near the bottom. I just think it's a little too long. I think my golden Wes Anderson range is like hour 30, hour 40.
It's just
But
by far the longest.
like borderline 2 hours.
Almost 2
But I
hours.
still really love it nonetheless.
I think I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, for me, it's probably an 8 also, but it was again like the fortunate timing of a rewatch, like literally a couple months after I saw it the first time, which just made me appreciate it more. Um, yeah, it's his only one that I think is rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, like 55% or something. But I do think I'm one of the people who would give it more credit than it usually gets.
Yeah. It goes off in like some little directions, but for me at least, like once like the whole pirate sequence begins, it just reels me back in.
Yeah, and there's the pirate scene, and then everything with Angelica Houston I also really like. She just plays the matriarch in all of these, and
Mhm.
she's great every time. Okay, now I'd like to skip a little bit ahead to a movie that's has a very special place in my heart, and that's 2012's Moonrise Kingdom. We already talked a little bit about it. It also stars Bill Murray, that goes without saying, and Jason Schwartzman, as well as Bruce Willis, Edward Norton, Bob Balaban, who, although we're not related, we share a last name. Um, Also, Jared Gilman and Cara Hayward, who I don't like. Jared Gilman, I follow on Letterboxd. I don't know if he's done movies besides that. Cara Hayward, I know she was in Manchester by the Sea. I don't know what else they've done besides that. I know they cameoed together in, what was it, Patterson with Adam Driver. Like they had a cameo together on the bus. It was like a cameo on the bus. I haven't seen it, but I've seen the trailer and they're in it. But Jared Gilman's big on Letterboxd, and so I follow his reviews a lot. And it's cool to be like, I was one of this movie's biggest fans when it came out. So yeah, I went to see this movie with my grandma when I was 10, and I don't know how my 10-year-old self loved it so much, but I immediately just like loved it. I think I also just really connected with the characters because they really felt like outsiders, and I know what that's like to sort of like feel like you're not understood or not seen, and they really like saw each other. And I guess like it's kind of like I didn't have any like big romances when I was 10, but of course like I thought it was really sweet how they connected. But yeah, I think it's beautiful. I think every stylistic choice he makes is so cool. Some of the classical music plus Alexander Desplat's music plus like I think this one is like it's an hour and a half, but you feel like a whole world in this movie. I feel like it's not just like he picked up a camera. Like it does feel pretty grand, even though it's set in like nothing like urban or anything. And Bruce Willis, I thought he was, besides the kids, he's kind of the heart of the movie because he's also like lonely and misunderstood, but he's this like fully fledged adult who's a police captain, and you wouldn't expect that from him.
Yeah, it was my first Wes movie too. Except I saw it on Netflix like 4 years after it came out. But it still really hit me hard. I was a really big summer camp kid, so I definitely kind of knew that whole vibe. Not like the Cub Scouts or anything sort of like that, but just kind of the whole vibe of summer camp is always an easy sell for me when it comes to movies. I will say, coming back to this movie now that I've like been through pretty much his whole filmography multiple times, it kind of does feel to me at least like the most like stereotypical Wes Anderson movie. Like if someone were to say like it kind of just has it all in a way, but I wouldn't say that's like a that's more like a nitpick than like an actual like con of the movie.
That's actually how I saw the Royal Tenenbaums because of the Alec Baldwin narration from the SNL thing. So that's what I was thinking when I watched Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah, that's also a really good answer. This is where Ed Norton solidifies himself as one of Anderson's guys. I'm pretty sure he's been in every movie of his since. And I love it. I think his just kind of delivery of he just knows the Anderson delivery and how to do deadpan really well, and he just has a really good voice for it. You mentioned Gall, the music. I'm a big fan of a lot of what he uses here. It's a bunch of just 20th century classical pieces from kind of lesser known artists or composers. I mean, the Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra being the opening and closer, I really like. And then Desplat's music as they're exploring kind of the whole Moonrise Kingdom, I guess you would call it, also really works. And the ending for me kind of honestly just feels the kind of like how I feel whenever I go back to school at the end of summer. Just kind of like their like goodbye and like the soft music in the background. It is almost it's very like melancholy but still sweet ending. Knowing that they're just kind of gonna keep going about their normal lives, but they'll still like have each other, which is really nice. And then it ends on that painting, which is the Criterion cover. I'm very happy that it is because it is a hell of a shot. Um,
Also, it's such a Wes Anderson thing that these kids, like, they're 10 years old and they come up with the name Moonrise Kingdom. Like, who the hell comes up with that name for an island? Uh, Also, you mentioned the music at the end. I don't know the name of the piece, but they used it again in the season 4 finale of I don't know if you guys have watched The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but I noticed that, and I was like, "That's a
was it
song from."
the was it like the more quiet like one with the choir, or was it the orchestra one?
It's like the choir,
Okay, that's I think it's called like Cuckoo or something, but it's by Benjamin Britten, the
probably.
same person who did Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra.
Okay.
I've actually been holding off rewatching this for a little bit because I'm editing a book that a friend of mine is writing on the films of Bruce Willis. So I've been like moving through his filmography in chronological order. So we're getting to Moonrise Kingdom. I'm excited to rewatch it. Um, but he's great in it, and you think Bruce Willis in a Wes Anderson movie, that seems like a strange choice, but he's always great in like those like kind of quirkier films. And I had a thought after Asteroid City about just how great Wes Anderson is at writing and directing children and making them so authentic, even as they're getting into these kind of weird situations, or if they're existing in like kind of a heightened version of reality, they always feel so real. And I love how this he uses this like pure, all-consuming love between the two lead children to kind of show how the adults around them are just falling apart. Like their relationships are in shambles, their like careers are messy, and I just love the contrast between the adults and children. It's something he probably does it the best here, but that's something I noticed in his future films also.
For some reason, like, I thought, like, when they go off and get married by Jason Schwartzman, who's cousin Ben, I thought that was, like, a totally normal thing, like, when 2 kids are in love, like, they really wanna declare their love for each other. I was like, "Okay, kinda weird, but cool." Like, I didn't realize at the time how, like, heightened of a Wes Anderson thing that is to do. But Jason Schwartzman, he's kinda perfect in this movie, and then Harvey Keitel shows up as the head of the the whole khaki scout like organization. And yeah, man, this movie is really special to me. It found me at the right time, and there was a period of time where I found myself rewatching it like almost once a year. And I try to show it to my parents. I don't think they were crazy about it.
I showed it to my
Um,
parents too,
what do
and
they think?
they were. I don't think they disliked it, but it ended, and my dad was just like, well, "That was a little odd."
Yeah, well, it's better than when my mom fell asleep halfway through the Grand Budapest
Yeah.
Hotel.
Oh no. Yeah, my problem with Moonrise Kingdom is I forgot that there is a scene. I don't know if this is a minor spoiler where they shoot a dog, and that's not something that my mom is good with. So when that happened, I was like, "Oh, I really messed up here," um, but it was fine.
The dog getting hit with the arrow, that's hard. Also, the
Yeah,
dog
yeah,
gets run over in Royal Tenenbaums. I don't know what the guy has against dogs,
yeah,
but
But
yeah.
he
Wes,
rectified
come
himself with
on.
Isle of Dogs. He's like, "Don't worry, guys.
yeah,
I love
justice for
That's
dogs. I
true.
love
dogs.
dogs.
That's true.
I just said the name. I love dogs."
It's like his apology video for
Yeah.
his crimes against the dog community. But yeah, my rating for Moonrise Kingdom is a 10 out of 10. I still rank it among like my top 20, 30 movies. Um, it's probably, if not my favorite movie of 2012, it's definitely on the top three, along with like Django Unchained. But I was really rooting for it to win Best Original Screenplay because I hadn't seen any of the other movies because I was 10 years old. And why would a 10-year-old watch Django Unchained? But now I've seen it. And so I remember that was like my first big, like following the Oscars year. And I was like, yay, Moonrise Kingdom's nominated for something, but it was a well-deserved nomination. What's your
I give it a
rating,
10
Lee?
too. I give it a 10. Um,
Yay!
yeah, and I think I love that you did love it when you were 10 because I think that speaks to how relatable, even though it is not necessarily a kids movie, I think that
Mhm.
speaks to how relatable the children characters and the worlds that he creates are for so many different generations.
I think it might be a
Uh,
good gateway into his filmography because
Yeah, yeah.
mhm.
it's also the least like there's no like R-rated violence or no like I guess like suicidal people in it. Like I guess like the childlike aspect helps you like
Mm,
be something lighter. Like even Isle of Dogs gets kind of gritty.
yeah.
Mhm. Like there's like an assassination in that movie that like I always forget till I go back and like, oh yeah, like this whole like really pretty sushi scene just turns into that. I'll go 9 out of 10. If it was earlier, I probably still would have said 10, but I've just kind of shifted my rankings and it falls just shy of my uber elite tier, but I still love it nonetheless and usually rewatch it sometime during the summer.
So now I'd like to go into his most acclaimed movie, I'd say, by the wide audiences. Was nominated for 9 Oscars and won 4, the most nominations and wins for any movie that year. And I think it's the one that made the most money. And I think it's also one of the ones that's most acclaimed by critics and audiences alike. And that is the Grand Budapest Hotel, of course. And I can see Jack is very excited. So if he'd like to start with this one, go
Yes,
ahead.
I am. Like you were talking about with Moonrise Kingdom, this is just among my 25 favorite movies ever. It's pretty much the combination of everything that I love about Wes Anderson movies. It's a period comedy, mystery, prison escape, and romance movie. Like it's so many things all at once, and yet it works. Um, we didn't talk about it, but I kind of referenced it earlier. But I think Fantastic Mr. Fox is probably the movie that hardest 180'd Wes Anderson like stylistically, and I think this is where we see or where we first see like the true result of it because this is where he begins to use miniatures in live action movies. He might have done it before, but I mean, there's so many here,
I
and they
think there was a
all.
bit in Steve Zissou, like with the wide shot of the submarine and all the
Mhm.
rooms.
But I think for here it's just so dependent on just his world and
Right.
just the extent at which it works really just continues to awe me. This was I think he had obviously had like big ensembles prior, but this was the first of his like gigantic ensembles where he would have like a big name star come in for like a minute, if even that, and then just be gone for the rest of the movie. Um, so I this is kind of just for me at least the Wes Anderson movie that I go back to the most. It's usually the one that I show people first. I think Ray Fiennes is his best performance is probably Schindler's List, but I would say that this is my favorite performance of his. I think just kind of the evolution that his character goes through throughout the movie, like while small, when you do get that payoff, particularly at that last scene on the train, just really nails the emotional core for me. The shot of Agatha on the carousel, I think that just
I was
belongs in a
gonna find a way to bring that in there.
Louvre
The music
museum.
with that, man, that's
Yes.
good. That's so good.
But yeah, no, this to me is just one of my all-time rewatchable movies, and just one that I think will hopefully be remembered as one of the seminal movies of this century, because I think it's just an absolute masterpiece.
It's a gorgeous looking movie, and I think he starts to get a little more ambitious with the structure of his narratives with this too. I was thinking about it in relation to Asteroid City last week, and how there's kind of this nesting narrative with it, where you open with the girl reading a book, and then we go back to seeing like the book,
Tom
I guess, being
Wilkinson.
written, or the events being recalled, and there's a flashback within that. Yeah, so it's kind of like,
It's the girl
flashback
reading
within
the
a
book.
flashback sort of situation.
Yeah. It's like the girl reading
Yeah.
the book. Tom Wilkinson's
Um,
introducing his book. His young self is Jude Law. He meets F. Murray Abraham, who's the old Zero,
Yes.
who is telling the story of the movie.
Yes, that's
Which
it.
I think that was my main flaw when I watched it when I was 12. Was it was just like
Mm,
such a complicated, like a bit confusing when I
yeah.
was younger.
Yeah, it can be hard. It can be hard to follow, especially because that sort of framing device, he doesn't really like go back like that often. But yeah, it's probably my favorite Wes Anderson movie. I know I've said that before. I don't know if it's different now. My opinions change a lot, but yeah, it's wonderful. I think I don't know if it's his funniest movie, but it is pretty funny. But then the ending, it's so heart-wrenching and nostalgic, and the performances are so good.
I think you also got the camaraderie between Ray Fiennes and Tony Revolori, which this is, I guess, his first movie, and now he's a very big actor. And they're characters who are sort of opposites. I mean, now that I think back at it, he's like definitely a womanizer, and but he's like a very hilarious, like very out there character. Like he's really a character. And then Zero, he's just very introverted. Like he knows what he wants to do, but he's not like you wouldn't expect him to be as assertive as he ends up to be in the rest of the movie. And the just the care that Gustav has for Zero, like when let's get into if we get into spoilers, when he kicks Willem Dafoe off the cliff, and you just like he like his voice raises and he's like, excellent job, Zero. Yeah, and it's just like a wonderful little like great job, son moment. Um, I know we've talked about this before, Jack, how much you wanted Ray Fiennes to get nominated for an Oscar for this movie. He was nominated for the Golden Globe, and that's about it, I think.
Yeah, that was just a tough year, because you still had Jake Gyllenhaal missing for Nightcrawler.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I don't
and
even.
David Oyelowo for Selma.
And I can't remember I know most of the 5 nominees. I'm pretty sure I'll probably miss one, but I'm kind of hard. I still find it hard to cut some of them from the lineup. It was just a killer year all around, I'd say.
Like I just watched Foxcatcher, and I was like, oh my god.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember that year being kind of surprised actually that Grand Budapest was pretty well represented when it came around to award season, because it came out so early in the year. It came out in
Right.
March, and I remember seeing it when it came out and being like, love this movie. It will not get any awards. It is too far away. People will forget about it. And that was stupid of me. I was wrong. I'm happy I was wrong.
I think in order to like maintain that traction, you need to have some sort of X factor, right? I mean, this movie just had like the great technical aspects. First of all, it won costumes, production, makeup, and original score. And I think it just had like great reception, box office. Like not many movies come out early the year and get nominated for Best Picture. Like Black Panther, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Elvis. Those are only a couple examples. Usually it's October to December. Also, you were mentioning the cameos. Do y'all remember Owen Wilson's character's name in this movie? His name
Ooh,
is Monsieur Chuck.
Oh.
that's it. Yeah, I was
It's
gonna.
the
I know it's
funniest
something so
thing.
out of place. Yeah, Chuck.
Um, again, there's no real easy way to describe it when people ask me about it. I don't know how to tell them, like, if it's a murder mystery, comedy, etc. But again, I really liked it when I was 12, and I've watched it, I think, 3, 4 times. There's no bad time to rewatch it. That's what I'm trying to get to. It's just a combination of the technical elements, the pacing, the genre blending, the cast, the characters. Um, yeah, it's a great movie. It's a high 9 out of 10 for me.
I
Screw
give
it.
it a 10.
It's an
It's
11 out
10.
of 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, nice. Katie, is it a 10 for you also?
It's a 10 for me too. Yeah. It's great.
Uh, okay. So, last one in our older Wes Anderson movie sections is the one that just came out in 2021. And that's The French Dispatch. Stars pretty much every person in Hollywood, including Owen Wilson riding a bike to introduce it. This also has a couple of like big narrative arcs, and I thought it was very welcome how like Angelica Houston is like narrating the obituary, which leads into Owen Wilson like he has a segment, and then there's this 3 sections. We start with like Benicio del Toro and Adrian Brody, then we go to Timothy Chalamet and Frances McDormand, and then there's Jeffrey Wright's storyline, and it's all around like this compilation of articles to honor the final issue of the French Dispatch in honor of its late um its late editor in chief Arthur Howitzer Jr., which in my opinion is such a memorable character name. And Bill Murray, I think, delivers a really good performance, even if it's only in a couple of scenes. And yeah, I. What do you guys think, Katie? We can start with you.
I really like this movie. This is one of those where it came out, and I feel like it was mostly met with kind of a lukewarm reception. I mean, still more on the positive side, but I just thought it was delightful. And it's an anthology film, and like most anthologies, some of the stories within it are more compelling than others. But I love to see Wes playing with this structure, and I think it's so fitting for a film that's about writing and journalism for it to be, set up as all these little stories as they're making this paper. Um, I really loved how he played with that, and still like it still has that meticulous, careful style. I just remember that opening shot where they're putting like all the drinks on the tray, and I was just like, oh, I love this. This is like the best ASMR ever. But then you have like in that final and like the final story, he has that like lengthy animated sequence. So and most of it's in
Hmm.
Yeah.
black and white actually, and not color, which is kind of a departure too, since he's so known for these like beautiful pastel, scenery, to have so much of the film in black and white too. And again, it like hit me emotionally at the end. That final story was so beautiful.
Could we talk about that one thing for a second? Because his use of color is really interesting. And he never straight up like tries to make it easy to find out why he cuts to a scene in color. And I think what I made of it is like he's trying to invoke some really special emotion, whether it's like Adrian Brody showing the painting and it's like you have to see it, or it's like he's tasting something and he cuts to color for a sec. It's some like really strong sense where suddenly he brings you out of like this is a picture of history, and suddenly you're in I don't know what year, 1950, 1960, whatever, with Jeffrey Wright or whoever it is experiencing this taste or this sight or this sudden like this song that Timothy Chalamet is playing in the thing. I thought it was a really interesting use of color, um, because most of the articles are actually in black and white, and he only cuts to color for maybe a sequence or a shot, maybe just a shot.
Yeah, the one moment that I always kind of think of in regards to what you just described was the I think it's like the very end of the second section, and it's when Timothy and I can't remember what the girl's name was, but they're on the bike, and it's Jarvis Cocker's cover of Aline, which plays a few times during that scene, I think. Um, And yeah, I think that was definitely the intention, because those moments just really kind of just were really, really powerful. And it's on top of that, also, I mean, the movie came out like only a few months after kind of, COVID had kind of lessened down and movie theaters were beginning to reopen. So just kind of that whole
Yeah.
euphoria, I think, really just like kind of added on to the whole experience. Um,
It's almost like releasing you from being trapped in a way, and
right.
like this, like you're suddenly like lifting the filter off the time capsule, maybe. So for me, I saw this one in theaters, and as opposed to Asteroid City, where it was just me and my grandma, there was actually a good amount of people in the French Dispatch, which gave me a lot of hope, especially because it was like 5, 6 months after theaters had opened, like you said. Um, and it was fun. I think when it ended, I didn't know what to make of it. I was really impressed, but I don't know how I felt about the structure and the pacing. Like I rewatched scenes, like I did a sort of rewatch where I rewatched some of the scenes, and it became a lot better. I was like, okay, this is like really rolling well, like the style and the pacing. And he definitely topped himself in terms of the Wes Anderson isms. But when I first saw the movie, I was thinking this would have been a much better movie if he had like intercut the different storylines instead of having it like one, two, three, and then we would have had like three big climaxes together. That's how at least I first felt when I saw the movie. But I need to like go back at it and feel how it's paced now. Um, but yeah, that's it's like a first time watch thing. I don't know if it'll. I think I would like it a lot more if I watch it again, but I still really like it. And again, when I rewatched when I did like a sort of rewatch, I didn't finish it the second time, but it's not because I wasn't liking it. Like I was liking it even more the second time. Um, Personally, honestly, my favorite storyline might even be the Timothy Chalamet one because I love how rebellious he was, like the whole time, and like his weird relationship with his girlfriend, who I think her name was like Lena Cowdery. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, but this is the first time I ever saw her in a movie. And he had a very weird relationship with Frances McDormand, who was the journalist, also a cool character named Lucinda Kremitz. And I enjoyed that storyline a lot, and I think it was like inspired by some real strike at a school in France. There's like some real riot. I can't remember what it was exactly. What was your guys' favorite storyline of the three?
Mine's the
Hmm.
last one. I like the third one with Jeffrey Wright. Um, I just think that the like there's this final moment between him and Stephen Park's characters where they discuss how they're basically outsiders in the place that they live and how they feel about that. That just kind of punched me in the gut. Like I don't know, I felt like I was just kind of going along having a good time with this movie, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna cry now. And also, he talks a lot about Jeffrey Wright character has this little aside too, where he talks about how much he loves food and like the joy of like solo dining and like have like enjoying a meal by yourself. And I have to travel a lot by myself, so that's something I've gotten very used to, and that kind of hit me where I live too, to hear somebody speak about that experience in a way that I definitely felt I could relate to. So yeah, I think it's that one for me.
Can we talk about Jeffrey Wright's beautiful narration voice?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. It's no
yeah.
As
surprise
anybody,
they put him as like the army general in Asteroid City, where he gets to
Uh-huh.
introduce the whole festival.
He can be like
yeah,
so commanding, but also so gentle. Like I
Hmm.
think he's great
I
at
love
both of
his
those.
voice.
Yeah.
I had such an appreciation for him after I watched Westworld, which was like right when the pandemic
Mm.
started for me, and he gave such a good performance in that too. So Jack, which one's your favorite of the three storylines?
I think I'm gonna have to. I'm probably side with Katie. I just really liked the whole sequence. Obviously, Jeffrey Wright's narration. Huge fan of the animated car chase that just comes out of
Yeah.
nowhere. Especially the bit of the bodybuilder, I guess, getting thrown out off the car
Oh.
into the window. They do the whole like loop around chase, and the second they get back into the car, he just jumps out of the window and back onto the car. Um, and I would also say that I do still really like the Benicio del Toro Adrian Brody storyline. I think that
See, a lot of people say that one's their favorite.
I think that is honestly some of the funniest moments in the movie. Especially just one really small moment. I don't know why it makes me laugh as much as I do, but there's just a scene where I guess like Benicio del Toro is running out of time, and there's a subtitle that just says 3 years later, and then it cuts to Adrian Brody just staring at the camera and says, "It's 3 years later." And I don't know why, but that just made me die laughing in the theater.
Or I love like the name of, I'm pretty sure the name of this one is The Concrete Masterpiece.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I don't remember the names of the other ones. I think it's like the other one is the private dining room of
The
the
commissioner
police
or something
commissioner.
like
I don't
that.
remember the other one's name, even though it's my favorite one. But it's something like the manifesto, something manifesto.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
revisions to a manifesto. That's what it is. But yeah, my rating for this one is like a high 7, possibly an 8.
Yeah, I'll say I'm like a low to mid 8. It's not one of my most rewatchable ones. Like you kind of mentioned, I kind of do come back to it just for an individual story or just to check out some moments. But I still do
Yeah.
really like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say also an 8.
Of course, we are coming to our review of a new movie, and that is, of course, Asteroid City, which is now playing in theaters.
Yeah, Asteroid City I saw on, I went to a night show, really enjoyed it, walked out like that was a really great Wes Anderson movie, and went to bed, woke up the next morning, and was just like, "I have so many thoughts about this." Just one of those films that the more I think about it, the more I find things that I love about it, and I think it's Wes's most ambitious movie by far, just, with the structure, how he has it as like a TV program about a play and then showing the play, but he moves back and forth throughout all those things. It's not kind of like that nesting situation that we saw with Grand Budapest. And he's
Hmm.
distinguishing that through like the aspect ratio and color and characters are like moving in and out of all of these different situations and kind of like bleeding into each other. I just found that so fascinating, but also just the story itself about how it's basically about this existential terror about the world around us and how do we cope with grief and impending doom and all of these things, and a lot of it is through art and creating. And I thought, as devastating as I found parts of it, it ended on, I think, a very hopeful note still. And it's just really funny, like all of his movies. This is maybe one of the funnier ones, actually. Yeah, I loved it.
I came out of it fairly just like fine. I think I went into it maybe with some people were looking at some people's like Wes Anderson rankings and seeing where they would put it over certain movies, and I would be like, oh, so this has the potential to be among like my favorite movies ever. So I went into it with maybe a bit too high of expectations, and it definitely wasn't what I at least thought it was going to be. Most specifically, what you referred to in regards to the whole framing device of the movie. But now that I've actually seen it and now that I know what to expect, I think going back to it and rewatching it, I will be much more comprehensive towards it because it was quite jarring for me, at least on the first
Yeah.
viewing. But just hearing everybody talk about it and like how much people do really like it, and just going into the whole theme is about like how we use art to like kind of not like cope, but just kind of like get through life almost, I think has just really kind of helped me reevaluate the movie and encouraged me to go see it again. Because, I mean, like I've mentioned with Royal Tenenbaums, I mean, West films typically do get better for me, at least with more rewatches.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely really excited to go back and see. And I definitely think that my rating could improve with more watches.
I'm very much with Jack here. I think I came out of it being like, all right, like, listen, everything within the actual movie, within Asteroid City, I really liked. I thought it was funny. I thought it was occasionally slow, but it was like really well done. I mean, it looks like a painting, honestly. Like it's so saturated, and it's the cast is all great. I think especially like Maya Hawke and Jeffrey Wright. Stephen Park even is really good in it. Hope Davis, Leaf Schreiber. Some of the kids are really fun. There's a lot of great jokes that are also just really outrageous. Like whatever version of the most like 11 like dial to an 11 version of that joke Wes could have written, he puts it in there. And but where the movie lost me is I just didn't like the framing device. Every time I cut back to like the black and white with the actors, I was like, okay, how is this really like contributing? I didn't really get it. When the climax came, there was a climactic scene within the world of the actors. I understood exactly why he was putting it in. But again, I feel like we could have cut a lot of that. And it also makes you think like, oh, it's all happening within like these people are acting within like a different world. It kind of you have to suspend disbelief because the world of Asteroid City is so much more interesting than the actor Jason Schwartzman life or actor Scarlett Johansson's life or like Bryan Cranston's a great narrator. It's just that whole segment I think didn't need to be as long as it was, and it's also consistently intercut within the movie.
I'm excited to see it again because I do think that that framing device is kind of confounding just because it is so complex. Like I really
Mhm.
had to sit back and think like, okay, where are we now? Are we in the show? Are we acting? Are we in the play? Like what's happening here? But yeah, I think it's
Yeah, it
fascinating.
confused me for a bit because it was like, oh, so are we watching Jason Schwartzman's life as an actor inside Asteroid City, or is this the character, or is he like right? It took me a while to understand what was going on, and also they just like Wes Anderson's writing is such like high end, complex English. So as much as you enjoy it, like you have to really listen all the time. Um, but if this was just everything inside of Asteroid City, I think it's really good. Like some of the actors, I think Tom Hanks gives such a great performance also. And the way this movie approaches grief, like sometimes it's really deadpan, and I really enjoy that. Tilda Swinton, like usually she's kind of repulsive in these movies. Like I absolutely hated her social services in Moonrise Kingdom. Like it's a great performance, but you just hate her because she's a social worker and he's an orphan, so you have to hate her character. But I thought she was actually like really nice. Like she's like, "Why aren't you including me in your little endeavors, kids?" Like she was really cute in this movie. And I actually really liked her. I like how
Yeah, I love
Jeff
that
Goldblum came
one
in for
line.
one
Oh
line.
my god. Yeah, that was great. No, I love it. Tilda,
I
well, I don't know if I should get too explicit since people maybe still haven't seen it, but yeah, I mean, there are so many people in this movie who have like so little screen time, but they just completely make the most of it. I did want to shout out Scarlett Johansson actually because I thought she was really good at employing that like deadpan delivery that Wes is so known for. I thought she was really, really great at that. I was a little surprised because sometimes I don't know, I'm mixed on her sometimes, but I really liked her in this.
Or the scene when she's like any scene where she's getting Jason Schwartzman to read lines with her, I thought was so
Hmm.
great.
Mhm. And he's
Yeah,
the window scenes. That
yeah.
she'd only been in Isle of Dogs prior, right?
Yeah,
Or was she in something else? Okay. I was gonna say, yeah, I think
Mhm.
she's a really good like addition to kind of like the West
Yeah,
assembly of players,
absolutely.
just nailing the
yeah.
Same with
deadpan
Stephen
and
Park, actually, I would say.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
I think
remember one of
it's
the
it's
first
maybe
things.
like one of Tom
Sorry, go
Hanks's
ahead.
like better recent performances. It's just like so subtly effective, especially when you look at some of the things he was doing last year. He was being a little crazy in
He had a weird year
2022,
dialing it
last
up.
but
year.
Yeah.
yeah.
Elvis, what else?
But
Otto
he's
was
back. He's
alright.
back.
Yeah. Anything is better than his Elvis performance.
This is another one where the music is so good too because you have Desplat doing the score again, which is like this wonderful like twinkling score that I think is so good for like the kind of more
Mhm.
sci-fi stuff. But the soundtrack they're pulling from a lot of like country and western, like blues songs from that era, which is the mid '50s. Um, and I thought that that was really effective. I thought the both the opening and the closing songs that they used for the film were really really wonderful. The lyrics just complemented the action so well, and then you have that one original song that
Jarvis
is
Cocker.
like perfect. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, the score was very kind of. It was much more reserved than it normally is. I'm pretty sure,
Mhm.
like there, like the album's only like an EP. There's only a handful of tracks, and most of
Yeah, I
them
think
kind
he
of go off
composed
of
like
like that. Na,
6.
na, 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 na,
Yeah,
that's like
it's
the
all the same
twinkling
riff.
noise.
Yeah.
But that too has kind of been something that, like, on retrospect, by retrospect, like a week ago, I've just been thinking back and being like, yeah, and actually maybe I was a little too nitpicky at first. So that's definitely something that I'm looking forward to paying more attention to going back
I'd like to
because
rewatch this one too.
Yeah, the kids in this are great. I mean, going back to like how great Wes is at working with children, like you have teenage characters in this and then like some younger children with like the classroom and the three sisters. Um, and I just thought they were all so delightful, and especially with the teenagers, like they're all there for like this sort of like science fair thing, and they're all these like nerds, and the way they just kind of like nerd out together felt very like true to what happens when you're a kid and then you find another kid who has the same interests as you, and then you just kind of like go crazy. I love that.
Yeah, I love how like they're probably like we've been talking about, like they're probably outsiders in their own schools. And then here they're like, these are my people. We can name all these like famous historians and whatever, or these famous historical people.
circle game that was never going to end, probably.
Uh-huh.
Oh man, I love that. Those little jokes of the kids. So we can start with
Yeah.
Katie this time. What's your rating for this movie?
I think it's a 10. I think if you had asked me like a few days ago, maybe a 9, but I'm gonna say 10 because I think I'm gonna find even more things that I like when I do get to go see it again. I think there's just so much in this film to pull out of it.
Is this your favorite of the year so far?
It is. Yeah.
This, for me, I would say it's getting really close to that 8 out of 10. It's a 7 for now, but I'm
Me
pretty
too. Me
sure
too.
I'm pretty sure all I need is the rewatch, and I'll pump that score up because
Yeah.
the more I think about it, the more I hear from other people, is just I keep going back to my thoughts. And I'm like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should reconsider.
Yeah, ditto. So now I want to move into something, a little nice discussion, which is what is our favorite scene or moment in any Wes Anderson movie?
Mm.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a minute.
I can start because I was thinking about this only today because I didn't know what I would say, and I have one that I think I would like. If we're talking about individual moments, um, I love the skiing chase in the Grand Budapest Hotel where they're switching everything, like where they're switching through the elevators and they put on the robes, and then the ski chase leading up to like Willem Dafoe on the cliff. That might be my favorite. That whole climax, sort of climax, because then there's a shootout later. But it's like I think it's the coolest moment in maybe any Wes Anderson movie.
I would have to
That's hard.
say, yeah, I was gonna say there's like multiple things that are like picking up
Shout
my
out
brain
one.
right
Shout
now.
one out.
I think mine probably also comes from Budapest, but I think it might be that final hotel climax. Uh, just 1-0 and Gustav go into the hotel dressed as the why am I blanking on the name of the restaurant? They're
Some
wearing like the
bakery.
the restaurant uniforms. And they're the bakery uniforms, and just like the whole kind of shootout with Adrian Brody as he like follows Agatha throughout the hotel, and then it all just kind of ends with Monsieur Chuck and Norton as the police chief running out, and then like they both give their side, and he just ends it all with "Nobody move, everybody's under arrest." And that's just one of the lines in that movie that never fails to
That's
make me laugh. But it's
like that's
probably like
Gustav Fish. He's trying to steal my fortune. That's I
mm-hmm.
forget his name, and he's a prick. Like
Degolf und Taxis. Another great last name, I should add. But no, there's like multiple other scenes I probably could have put. Even the opening credits to Moonrise Kingdom with the young person's guide to the
oh
orchestra.
yes,
I just really love that piece.
amazing.
The
I
whole
would rewatch
piece,
that.
the whole piece with the narration, I also just really love, and it goes more in depth with like individual instruments and stuff. And then the final piece in that whole kind of big work is what plays during the credits. And so that's kind of just like a nice ending to it all.
I do not stand by this answer at all, but it's probably the first thing that popped into my head since I just rewatched Rushmore. But I love the talking about plays within plays.
Oh,
He uses plays in Rushmore because the kid is, has like a theater group or whatever. And I love that they do a high school theater version of Serpico.
oh,
And they
Yep.
I
have
don't
like
even remember
they
that.
have like
Mhm.
they have like the like fake cocaine, and they cut to like these little like first graders sitting in the audience like, what is happening? They have like machine guns, and
That's
like
brilliant.
it's just really funny. I would watch a full length version of that
I didn't
like
even
any
notice that
day. I would
because
fund it. It's
I
hilarious.
didn't even notice that because I saw Serpico for the first time after I saw Rushmore for the first time.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have remembered
Yeah,
that.
it's great.
And another topic while we're at it, what is our favorite performance in a Wes Anderson movie? I have a prediction. Me and Jack have the same one here. I was thinking Ray Fiennes in Grand Budapest, just because.
That's one of the
Are we in
obvious like
agreement on
ones that come
that?
up there. I would probably say he's my favorite. Yeah, I would say also Schwartzman and Bloom and Rushmore. I would also put really high on my, or not
Mhm.
Bloom, Murray. I would put really high on my list. But no, I think, well, Gustav for me. I mean, I saw Grand Budapest like I was only like 15 or so, so I wasn't like, huge into like the whole kind of like cinema lore at that point. So I'd really only known him as Voldemort. So just kind of that whole yin and yang of it all, I think really just emphasized his character. And then seeing Schindler's List and then coming back to him like, oh wow, like Ray Fiennes is just like incredible in this movie. Just like all the
The
mannerisms
Menu
and
was one of my favorites of last year, and he
Mhm.
was so good in that. Those three just make my top three Ray Fiennes performances.
Yeah, I don't know. Mine might be, I mean, that's definitely up there for me too. Mine might be Gene Hackman and Royal Tenenbaums, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I mean, I think he's, talking about actors who really fit in well with the Wes Anderson universe. And even if you don't really expect them to, I think he's just remarkable in that movie.
Yeah. Fun fact: do you guys know the number of Wes Anderson performances that have been nominated for an Oscar?
None, right?
Is it zero?
It's zero.
That's so.
Yeah,
I
so
was gonna
absurd.
say. I mean, Fines was probably the best chance. I
I
mean,
think Hackman
I mean, it
got
could
close as
be.
well because he was
the
nominated. He
Globe,
won the
Yeah.
Golden Globe
and I don't know if did Murray get in for Zissou
for
I don't
Golden
at the
think so.
Globe.
Globes, maybe.
I don't
Because
know because the movie
that movie
wasn't
being
as well
so
received.
that movie being so mixedly received, that I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. But the existence of comedy categories makes it much
I think
easier
Angelica
for them
Houston
to
got
get
into the
in.
Golden Globes too for
Mhm.
Royal Tenenbaums, but I might be wrong.
Hmm.
I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like crazy to think about, but also at the same time, so many of his films, especially his later films, are just these like massive ensemble pieces that definitely have more like lead players, but I don't know if maybe they kind of get lost in like the scope of things when it comes to like awards voting. So
I think that's unfortunately what happened with Women Talking, where there were so many good ones like Claire Foy, Rooney Mara, Jessie Buckley, Ben Whishaw. They just like couldn't decide who was best in lead supporting whatever. But yeah, also fun fact, I'm pretty sure it's the same number for Denis Villeneuve movies, also zero performances, interestingly enough. Okay, so last but not least, let's get into our rankings. So do you guys have like your ranking with you on like top 11, I guess?
I mean, my ranking isn't so much like a bad to good. It's more so just like a what I think is like among my absolute favorites ever to like what I like
100%.
essentially. uh, so my number 11 is Bottle Rocket, a movie we didn't really discuss, but I like it. It just like really laid the bare bones for everything that was to come, and it being so, I think, kind of removed from the rest of what he does later on does honestly help it just as a rewatchable. But again, I just like the other movies shyly more. My number 10 is Life Aquatic. My number 9 is The Darjeeling Limited. Number 8, Asteroid City. Number 7, Isle of Dogs. Number 6, The French Dispatch. Number 5, Rushmore. Number 4, Moonrise Kingdom. Number 3, Royal Tenenbaums. Number 2, Fantastic Mr. Fox. And number
Ooh,
1, The Grand Budapest Hotel.
okay. Should I go next or Katie, are you ready with yours?
I'll go. but don't stand by it. If you ask me in 20 minutes, it might be totally different. I think
Happens
my
sometimes with some
least
of our rankings is like
I
that.
know, I know. Well, and I genuinely do like all of his movies. I mean, I'd put at number 11, I think I'd put Isle of Dogs. That's kind of the only one that I'm a little more like on, but I still mostly like it. Then I would say Bottle Rocket. Then I think Did a Darling Limited, then Life Aquatic, then French Dispatch, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Rushmore, Royal Tenenbaums, Asteroid City, Moonrise Kingdom, and then Grand Budapest at number 1.
Wow, Asteroid City top 3. Dang, nice. Impressive. That's nice. Okay, so my number 11 is Bottle Rocket as well. I just watched it this week. I wasn't huge on it, but it was still like I thought it was clever. Now, number 10, Jack's gonna kill me, but I haven't watched it in years. Fantastic Mr. Fox, but it's because I need the rewatch. That's why I watched the other one sooner, and I don't have a great memory of it. It's still a good movie. I will happily rewatch it, and I'm sure I would love it, but I remember just, like, watching it when I was 7 years old, not being crazy about it, and I've rewatched clips since then, and I like it more, but I feel like if I watched it through, it would go up. No, go ahead. What was you
I was
gonna
gonna
say?
say, if I was feeling a little bit more daring, I might have picked George Clooney for my favorite performance in a Wes Anderson movie because I think
Ooh.
he's unreal as
That's a
for
good
a
one,
voice acting performance. It is incredibly effective for me, at least.
So number 9 is Asteroid City then. 8, Rushmore. 7, Darjeeling Limited. I actually really like Darjeeling Limited. It's like a maybe even it's probably an 8, high 8.
That's one of my favorite soundtracks of a Wes Anderson movie. His
Oh,
pulls
for
from
sure.
Satyajit Ray films, I really, really love, and that's how I pretty much found like the Apu trilogy in those movies.
6 is The French Dispatch. 5 is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. 4, The Royal Tenenbaums. 3, Isle of Dogs. I actually love Isle of Dogs. 2, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and number 1, Moonrise Kingdom.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean Wes Anderson rankings like they're all like he hasn't made like a quote unquote bad movie, so it's just kind of an order of which ones do you like.
All hits, no misses.
Like in my opinion, his debut is the weakest, and it's still a fun movie. Like 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great look into one of my favorite filmmakers. First of all, Katie, where can people find you on social media?
So you can find my reviews on my blog, which is katieatthemovies.com. And I'm on Instagram at katieatthemovies. I'm sorry, I have a different handle on every social media. My letterbox is just my name, Katie Carter. And I have Twitter, I guess, still as well, which is KDL_Carter. So you can follow me there.
Jack?
You can find my reviews on Letterboxd and see what I'm thinking of the movies I'm watching. You can also hear me and my good buddies Hunter and Dave on the Reel Chronicles podcast. We've got some exciting anniversary episodes coming up, and I know we have some interesting top 10s and some fun drafts coming down the line. And then, of course, you can see me hosting on the League of Cinephiles. We have one more match for our big singles trivia championship, so that'll definitely be fun. And then I'm sure we have some other fun stuff coming your way.
The pain. I lost already, but it's okay. It was a good run. I'll hopefully be back. But yeah, check out Jack's podcast, Reel Chronicles. I hear the Fugitive episode's coming out soon.
I think it already is out. I think we actually just released it the other day.
Awesome. And Katie's review of Asteroid City, as well as her other reviews, coming soon. And thank you to you guys for watching. I'm Will, and this has been Film Fanatics. See you guys next time.
Film Fanatics. From the silver screen to your earphones with Alan Azulay and Gal Balaban.